All right, there we go. So I think we're ready to rock and roll here. So good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're dialing in from. My name is Coach Reggie Waller, Director of Athlete Development here with Team Varlo. And then I'm looking at my screen here and I see in the upper corner, Coach Lizzie is here with us as well. So we both welcome everyone to today's session by our sponsor, Salt Stick. And we have been having some great conversations behind the scenes. And we're very pleased to have Salt Stick here with us today to talk about all things hydration, electrolytes, and really kind of any burning questions you may have as it relates to the sport that you're racing in. So I did inform the team that we did not just have triathletes, we had some runners, cyclists, swimmers, you name it. We have a pretty diverse population. So, as when you chime in and you ask your question, if you can just introduce your name and the sport, just so that in that way that can help the team give an understanding of maybe kind of how to target that question as well. So, this is the first series of our educational sessions with our sponsors. So again, thank you for joining. And then I do see we have two members of the leadership team as well here, Ed Chang, COO, and then we have Colleen Bartling, who is our team director. So thank you both for joining as well. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and kick it off so we can hear, the great things about our sponsors. So we have Jess Cerra. She is the founder of Joje Bar, and she is currently VP of Innovation and Community Development with Salt Stick, and also is a pro cyclist and has a master's degree with a focus on sweat and hydration. So, when we kind of, dig into, some of these questions here, talking about, having an expert, this is phenomenal. So no pressure, Jess, no, by all means. And then we have Noah McDermott, who is manager of marketing at Salt Stick. And from a marketing standpoint, showing off that new collaboration Salt Stick, singlet there. So we love it. And, prior to joining Salt Stick, Noah worked over at GU as well. So, again, with both of these individuals here, yep, there we go. Love the singlet. With both of these individuals here, Lizzie and I were excited to bring them on board and, really, share some of the questions that we had as it relates to us. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jess and Noah and, let you begin our discussion this evening, and we'll blend those questions in as we go along.
Cool. Well, I think I'm going to lead most of the discussion, and I'll just preface it with, we went to the running event in Texas a couple of weeks ago, and we all left there with some special sickness, and I'm still struggling a little bit with mine. So I feel a lot better than I sound. But we're super pumped to be here tonight and to be partnering with your team and with Varlo. It's really exciting, and thank you for making the time. I know it's a busy time of year, so we're excited to just kind of kick it off. And I see a lot going on in the chat here. Has everyone on this meeting tried a Salt Stick product before, or do we have lots of new people? Okay, good. I'm assuming everyone on this meeting probably uses some form of electrolyte replenishment or has a go-to brand. I got a couple of questions about a specific brand. So just to kick it off, like Reggie said, I'm the founder of Joje Bar. It's a small energy bar company that you've probably never heard of. What makes us special is we're baked like a cookie. So we literally cut our bars, we put them on baking sheets, and they go in a convection oven. So I founded that brand while I was racing full time. I don't race professionally anymore, but I did race professionally on the road for 5 years. And then I switched over to gravel. And now I consider myself more of a community leader and a mentor. But during that time, I had finished my master's degree in exercise phys, And I started a small catering and private chef company to support myself, because as we know, in women's professional sports, you're not making bank. You're normally working multiple jobs to make it happen. And during this time, it allowed me to explore the void in the market for energy bars. So I created this product and I grew the company. And then now is a good time to introduce our parent brand. Joje Bar was actually acquired by our parent brand, which is called Elite Active Nutrition. And the name of our company was extremely intentional. It's spelled ALETE, and it means all athletes. So Reggie mentioned that one of my roles is the director of community development. So it's important to us to spread the message that our products can be used for elite athletes, to recreational athletes, to if you're just getting into a sport. We just want people to have a better experience by understanding and using the right nutrition products. So this parent brand first bought Salt Stick, the electrolyte replenishment brand, and then they bought Joje, and then Bonk Breaker, which is another one of the brands in our little family that I'll talk about. So to give you a sense, first off, why is our company different? Why are we different from like a Cliff Bar or a Gatorade? We're super small, and every single brand in the company was founded by an athlete like myself that is still involved in the brand in some way. So we all really, really care about these brands, and we created them and we're a part of them because we believe in the space that we fill and the reasoning behind why our brands are unique to other products on the market. Can people not hear me? I see a note here about losing audio.
I can hear you, Jess.
Okay. All right, good. I'll keep rambling away. So the Salt Stick brand, I call it an electrolyte replenishment brand versus a hydration brand because we specialize in electrolytes. So what makes Salt Stick stand out from every other company out there is our formula mimics the exact ratio of electrolytes you lose in your sweat. So there's 4 key electrolytes that are lost in your sweat. The main one, which we all know, is sodium. That's obvious. Potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So like Reggie mentioned, my grad school research, I spent a lot of time in this really hot, sweaty, gross environmental chamber at the lab at San Diego State University collecting sweat from people, because what I was interested in was calcium lost through sweat and how that can relate to low bone density in endurance athletes. So that is one example of why this ratio is so important. Yes, we think about electrolytes when we think about performance or cramping, but there's other important electrolytes that we do lose in our sweat that can relate to overall health, recovery, and those types of things that we often don't think about. So that is what the Salt Stick brand specializes in. We have 3 key products within that brand. The one that I like the most and that I'm hearing the most chat about here is our fast chews. So we compare them to like a sweet tart with electrolytes. So if you haven't had them, they kind of look like a sweet tart. I should have brought a packet. And they're not like a gummy chewy, but they're like a sweet tart consistency. And you chew it in your mouth without any water. It's meant to go directly into your bloodstream through the lining in your mouth. So it's instantaneous. If you've ever been in a situation where I feel like the hamstring is always the first thing to go. You're like, start to get that cramp and you chew a couple of those fast chews. It's amazing. I will say that before I came into this family, I did not use Salt Stick. I had used it actually, funny enough, once as a chef cooking for a bike company at Kona for Ironman Worlds. And I was downing these salt sticks because it was really hard work cooking for this company. It was hot. We didn't have air conditioning in our house. but I never actually used these as an athlete until recently when I came into this family. And these salt sticks, one, I'm big on taste. I really like, I make my nutrition decisions based off of taste, especially when it comes to calories. I really like to enjoy what I'm eating. And despite these fast chews not actually having they're not calorically dense, but they do taste good. And so for me, that is motivating to stay on top of my electrolyte replenishment. There's nothing worse than when you pack stuff that you actually don't want to eat or consume, and it's just kind of hanging out in your jersey pocket or your however you carry your nutrition if you're a runner, and so then you don't eat it. So I think that is one of the key things that makes this product stand out. Our second product is probably our most well-known product, which is the capsule. And that is your standard capsule that you swallow. We like to say that the capsule is like because sometimes it's harder to take during. So this is like your preload, and then your fast chew is like your fast during, stay on top of it, electrolytes. The story that I always tell is last year at the Unbound 200-mile gravel race, I ate 55 fast chews during that race in 13 hours. And I came 10th overall in the pro field, which for me at this point in my career was an amazing result. And I had no issues with cramping. It was really hot that day. And I think that's a testament to a product that if you can take on that much of one thing and it works. My mouth was completely raw. I won't lie about that. My mouth was, but who knows? I mean, someone asked me to write down what I ate that day, and I had on there like those Brazilian cheese balls, donuts, apple juice, Sprite, like who knows what made my mouth raw, but I know the fast chews work, and I know that I was handing them out to people who were cramping on the side of the road. The capsules, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a bit when I get to some of the questions that we received, they're more bang for your buck. So you will take less of them because they have more electrolytes, but they might be a little harder to consume during exercise. I think it's sort of preferential depending on who you are. Our third product line is our newest, which is our drink mix. And again, what we're trying to do with our drink mix is focus in on what we do best, which is electrolyte replenishment. So it's not a drink mix that has calories. It's a drink mix that has this exact ratio of electrolytes, which can actually be kind of nice because if you're like me, then you get to double down on your taste when you're exercising because you have your delicious drink mix, but then you can still eat all the other things that you love to have to bring the calories. Or you can even certainly pair it with a lot of sports nutrition has some form of electrolytes. It's just not enough. Or maybe post-workout, you want to have your recovery drink, but you also want to replace more specifically the electrolytes that you've lost. We think about this mostly for hot training or hot events, but where I live in Montana, we got 6 inches of snow today. And sometimes when I'm out skiing or doing things, it's so hard for me to get to my hydration that afterwards is when I really, really need to focus on that replenishment, or I don't sleep well and I feel totally dehydrated and like crap the next day. So I think our drink mix can apply to multiple scenarios. Oh yeah, Luis, hold up the fast chews. I'm on a screen. I got to go to gallery view here. Oh, Noah's holding up. Yep. So that's our fast chew. Will you hold up the packet, Noah?
Yeah.
Or maybe
So
you have
they come in 60 count bottles.
Yeah.
And then
I was trying to get off of the mute, but I couldn't find it. This is what the tart orange fast chew pack looks like. These actually saved me big time when I did Eagleman 70.3 back in June of this year, and that's the single tart orange one.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Tart orange is my favorite flavor, and mixed berry is up there too. And mango.
Actually, funny story, somebody handed them to me because I had left my other stuff that I used when I did races. I left it at home and I couldn't find it anywhere, and they gave me a bunch of packs of them, and they worked like a charm. I had zero cramping issues the whole time between the bike and the run. It was probably one of the best. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't have finished the race because they got really hot. It rained the whole bike ride, and then it got extremely hot, like Eagle Man always does when we got on the run.
Where's Eagle Man?
Cambridge, Maryland.
Okay.
It's the 70.3 half Ironman that they do in Cambridge, Maryland in June. It's
You know,
notoriously windy and hot.
Windy and hot, so dry,
Mhm.
hot. A
Mhm.
lot of our customers have the similar story that someone threw them some salt sticks at a race, or it saved them and they wouldn't have finished. And so we think that our products stand for themselves. The one thing that we have to fight for is that we're smaller brands. So sometimes people don't know about us until they try us and they're like, how the heck have I survived without these fast shoes before? So does anybody have any questions about the information that I just went over, or any of the different products in our product line? I think everyone knows this, but you have access to a 30% off discount code, which is almost wholesale pricing. So if anybody doesn't have that, let us know, but I think it's been dispersed. So that way, if you want to try it, it's a little bit lower risk. But
yeah, and I'm looking at Colleen here. I think we do have that out on our quick links on Discord. So yeah, if anyone doesn't have access to that, let us know. We'll make sure we point you in the right direction. Jess, I did have one question come through here. And thanks, Noah, for dropping that in the chat as well. I see the code there. Someone was asking, can you talk about recommendations for pre-race hydrations in the days leading up to a race?
Right. This is a great question. And I think that someone sent a question similar to this over email, and someone that knows that they have a high sweat rate. So I like to look at this as like a big picture. And this also goes with, like, in this other question, this individual asked about carb loading. So I'm not a big fan of trying to load on anything. First off, let's just completely back up and talk about training. So I think that nutrition is just as important in your training regimen as however you approach your training. Whether that's like, I do what I feel on a day and I get up and I go out, you should be practicing your nutrition on that day. Whether it's you're working with a coach and you're very specific and methodical about it, that's fine too. But nutrition training is just as important, and it can help you learn a lot about your body. So practicing those habits, especially in the more extreme environments, is really important. So you sort of understand what works for you, what doesn't work for you, like when you were cramping, the days that like something kind of was off, and that way you can think about it. So when you're looking at a week going into an event, you're probably going to be tapering. And so you can get caught in that trap of like, I'm not exercising, I'm going to eat less, I don't feel as good, like I'm just going to eat salad. But that, I encourage you to steer away from that thinking and to to almost overdo it every single day on your nutrition. And I challenge you to try this and to see how good you feel on your event day. And that way, the day before, you're not cramming a bunch of things into your system, because your body can really only digest and absorb so many carbohydrates at a time. And you can store some of those as glycogen, but carb loading or electrolyte loading itself is probably not going to save you. It's better than underfueling, I will tell you that. So I would approach it holistically, looking at the whole week and making sure that you're just staying on drinking your water, staying on top of your electrolytes, taking the prescribed amount of electrolytes, whether it's through salt stick or hopefully that works for you, and focusing on like at least a 70% carbohydrate diet, making sure that you have rich carbohydrates. And they can even be, for me personally on race week, I'm not eating the farros and I'm trying to keep it super simple on my system, because I know for me that if I have too much fiber and too many of those types of things, like I kind of get bloated and I don't feel good. So I know that over time that for me, like white pasta, white rice, and then just making sure that like, especially after, even if it's an hour, because I'm on a taper week, that I am taking those electrolytes back in. You'll also notice that you're sleeping better during that time. And in fact, if you're not sleeping good going into a race, it could even be because your nutrition intake or your electrolyte intake is off. Sometimes eating carbs can actually promote better sleep because it causes that rise and fall in insulin. So think about it holistically as you go into the week. And then the day before, just make sure you stay topped off before the race. You can practice this. For some people, it's nerves, right? Like eating breakfast on event morning is horrible. And it's so funny. It's like on any other Saturday, if you put a pancake in front of me, I would hoover that thing down. And today I hate pancakes. But I mean, that's just the reality of racing. And you have to figure out how to get that pancake down. Maybe you have to start earlier and you're eating it, one bite every 15 minutes. So it's the same thing with electrolytes. Just because if you're not a good eater before an event, it's probably also hard to stay on top of the hydration and the electrolytes. So small amounts leading up to it. And then once the gun goes off, it goes back to that practice. And practice is, it's not only, the amount that you get in, but knowing like how do you carry things and how do you access it? So in a gravel race, the first hour is insane and you're surrounded by 1,000 people and elbows are bumping, it's dusty, there's crashes, and it's really hard to get to your nutrition. So I always have a plan of exactly what I'm going to have 45 minutes into a race and how I'm going to get to it on my bike. So I would say those are the types of things that I think will impact your performance more than focusing on like just, there's no magic loading of anything that's going to help you. Most of it comes down to just that, like the practice and that holistic view, like I said. So hopefully I answered that question. I kind of get on a soapbox about that just because I've been around for so long and I've learned so much about myself as an athlete, and also just, watching people hammer a race so hard in the beginning and like complete, like you're on your adrenaline and then just completely forgetting about the nutrition. But it's normally, if you stick to that plan and you kind of stay on pace and you finish, it's super motivating. And I'm sure people on this call have experienced that before, when it kind of feels wrong to maybe go a little slower or to eat something early. But when you eat early and drink early, eat often and drink often, and you stick to your plan, it's really cool to feel it come together at the end of the day, whether it's an hour or 13 hours.
Hey, Jess, we had one more question come through the chat here when you talked about the product. So if you can kind of explain a little bit about the race ready caps versus the regular yellow label.
Yep. Great question. I'm glad this came up. So when I joined the team, I was just coming out of professional racing where I was in the doping pool for USADA and WADA. So whether they come to your house and they take your pee and blood or they test you after events, you're pretty much taught that you don't ingest anything without a certification for testing on every single lot of a brand. And I mean, I wouldn't even go and get a smoothie somewhere at that point, because there's so many stories about athletes who have claim to have ingested something that they didn't know. So what happens with salt stick production is we have a certification called Informed Choice. And what that means is we actually have a third party come in and test random lots throughout the year to make sure that there's no contamination from our raw ingredients to our production to anything that's going on. With the race ready line, we take that a step further and we use an informed sport certification, which is on the same level as NSF, which is another certification that you might look for if you ever have been tested or might go to an event where you're even tested as an age grouper, because they do that at Ironman events and they do that at cycling events. So in this scenario, every single lot of the product is tested. So that way, like in my scenario, I would save bottles in one salt stick or my protein powder and a scoop of protein from every single lot. So if anything was ever contaminated, I had that available. So it's a pretty extreme level. Do you need to buy the race ready? No. Do you need to spend the extra money? No. If you know that you might be tested and you want to be able to trace back that lot, yes. Now, with that said, our Caps Plus line, which has the caffeine, is only available in the race ready line. So if you like that extra bit of caffeine with your caps, which is awesome because caffeine it's a legal substance that you should all be using for performance benefit, in my opinion. I mean, it's just caffeine has been shown year over year to improve performance. So if you like that part of the Caps Plus line, then you will only be able to find that in the race ready product. Any other questions about that or the sort of cadence of during event consumption? Reggie, I think I got a question over email that asked about a certain sweat rate test and then another product called pH. It's the precision hydration. Do you mind if I address that question now?
Yeah, if we can, if you can answer that, because I know there's multiple tests, right? I've done one through Leveling a few years back, and then Gatorade just came out with something recently within the past year. So I guess and then not everybody can walk into a lab, right, and get
Right.
an actual test done. They may not live near a university or the cost or whatever the case may be. So I guess if you can talk about that, like how do we calculate that, because you can go and I know through for Lizzie and I through our certifications, we have those formulas where you can go old school to figure out the numbers. Okay, how much electrolytes are you taking in, how much are you losing doing a particular workout, then to kind of put that formula together. So if you can kind of talk about best practices for the group here, I think that would be helpful around sweat analysis or sweat testing.
Yeah. So first off, just to understand what our sweat is. So salt is different than sodium. Salt is sodium and chloride together. So we say sodium, but we are losing essentially salt when we're sweating. And so that's why you'll notice that sodium chloride is the electrolyte on our labels. So I think I looked up the H-drop test and I'm not familiar with it. I see that they work with USA Cycling, so they must have some validity. I don't know enough about the specific brands to provide those recommendations. I would want to do like a lit review on all of them. But what I can tell you is that if this is something you're exploring, you should stick to one brand and you should test it under multiple environments and over a certain period of time. And that way you have that consistency, that it's that same brand that you're using, because there's going to be variability in all brands. So from the H drop test, what I'm seeing is that it kind of takes that data and it puts it more into usable terms. So it sort of tells you where your hydration is over time, and then how much sodium and chloride you'd want to be replacing. It talks a little bit about potassium. So I think that that's important to understand, and it can help you understand. So again, just to emphasize, I've never used the H drop. I've never used the one that Gatorade's putting out, but I think there's a lot of good products out there. They're inexpensive. I mean, $50 or less to use a take-home test. And if you're struggling and you want to learn more, or if you're just curious, I think this is a great way to use it. Just generally speaking, if you are a larger person, muscular, tall, you can lose up to 2,000 milligrams of sodium per hour when you are training or competing in the right environment. And if you think about that and knowing that you should replace at least half of that, that's 1,000 milligrams an hour to replace. Someone smaller like me, I know that I have a high sweat rate, and I know that I'm super salty sweater. So for me, it's probably closer to 1,500 milligrams an hour, but it's a job. It's a job to stay on top of that much. And that's why it can be nice to maybe have like a drink mix and a capsule or a fast chew. And so I'm going to kind of tie this into some of the questions we're getting on the chat with the amount that you would take during a race. So our prescription for the capsule is one to two per hour. And the fast chew could be 1 to 2 every 15 to 20 minutes. Obviously wanting to stay on top of that and doing it before you're feeling the cramping, but I think it's something that you should practice. It definitely varies by your size. It varies by your sweat rate, and it varies by the environment that you're in. So just as general advice, when you start out, if you can learn, so my example of using the H drop over multiple environments, let's say you try it now in the winter, you try it in the summer when it's super hot and dry or super hot and humid, and you kind of learn where you're at. Aim to replace at least half of what you're losing. Start there. Even like with your calories, like that's a huge jump. If you can aim to replace everything, then you're going to be feeling really, really good. What you can't replace, you want to get to that immediately after, within the first 30 minutes, getting whatever you can in, liquids, the drink mix, your recovery drink, and then within the next hour trying to address the rest. I think the biggest thing I see is timing. And nutrition is mostly about timing. And I think most of us understand that timing. It's just really hard to implement sometimes. It's a lot more fun to like have pizza and beer and all of that after you're done and put it all at that time of day. But if you really want to feel good and you want to see some performance gains, focusing on that timing and the right consumption before, during, and after, and then healthier and less later in the day, that's where you're going to see those gains.
Yeah, Jess, that's a good point. I've had a conversation with, several of my athletes, and when you're racing, like your focus just like, okay, I got to go. And, it's like your body feels good. You're like, oh, well, you know what? I'm not going to take this because I'm feeling good now.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when you realize, oh, well, I need it, well, it's a little bit too late. And I think one of the best practices is to implement is, we all have like maybe some kind of device, whether it's a watch on our wrist or the bike computer, and setting it up, like maybe say every 15 minutes or 20 minutes to take, some kind of food or nutrition or hydration, setting it up so it's like clockwork. Because when you start thinking about, well, okay, I'm going to take it every, say, 10 miles, well, that 10 miles could be, say, 8 minutes, at one point, and then could be a little bit longer at a certain point. But when you're looking at time, it's pretty much set in stone. Whereas if it goes off every 15 minutes, because there was a guy that I was training with, and every 15 minutes his bike computer was going off and he was drinking. And I'm looking at him like, Dave, we haven't really done anything. Why are you already drinking? But he's, and I asked him the question, and he's like, he's priming his body so then that way he's not falling behind. He's taking in the calories, the electrolytes, everything that he needed in his bottle to keep him going. And he, held up very well for his ride. So that was very interesting to see that. And that's, what I've, tried to share with my athletes as well, is just using that timer, like that little, tip and trick to keep you in the game.
If that's what you need, it's funny too, because the first hour or 30 minutes of a race can fly by and you don't even know it. But then when you're in the box, 15 minutes seems like a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's sort of an art. It definitely have to practice that. And if you're not good at just doing it off of judgment, having that timer, most computers now have that function. So I'm a big fan of that.
We got a question about caffeine. In order for caffeine to be effective during racing, would you recommend cutting back on it before the race?
That's a really good question. I definitely have had those teammates that are caffeine addicts that are like taking way too much caffeine during a race, like, whoa. So I would say maybe a little, but be careful, because the last thing that you want is to be jittery. So I would definitely practice. For me, I'm super sensitive to caffeine when it's hot out. I'm more sensitive, as we most are, because caffeine raises your core temperature. So you could always try cold coffee on hot days to keep your core temperature low. And at elevation, if you've ever raced anywhere high and like had your regular cup of coffee and you're just like, whoa. So it's definitely something to practice. I've tried this before, and I think it's kind of up to you to keep it safe, where you're not like blowing up your heart by having so much caffeine during a race. If you want to taper your caffeine a little bit going into an event, I like to have 2 cups of coffee every morning. Maybe I'll have a cup, and then I feel those 2 cups a little bit more on race day. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, as long as you're not using like an unhealthy amount. I'm pretty sure there's actually a regulation for the amount of caffeine that's legal. I don't know what it is. I think it's like 800 milligrams or something. Not that they could ever test for that, but do you recommend alternating between caffeine? Yes. Right. Definitely. I would not use the caffeinated chews during a race. And we also don't make caffeinated chews yet. We only make a caffeinated capsule. We are looking at the caffeinated chews as an option for the future, but I would be very careful with that and practice that during training, especially if you're sensitive to caffeine.
One question I have with the product, right, whether it be the chews or the drink, so, now some of us are moving, depending on where we are, with us being a global team, depending on where we are, some of us are indoors for the season. And, so what's like kind of like the time where we should be using like the choose? Is it like, so if I'm doing like a 45-minute Zwift ride, right? Should I be using this product, or should I just be using like kind of straight water with a little bit of something? Or like, what is that kind of like magic time to where this product would be beneficial to then, use as part of your indoor training?
Yeah, that's a great question. that was my workout today, was a 90-minute trainer ride, and I could have canoed myself out of there because I sweat so much when I'm on the trainer. So I compare it to a hot environment. I would say that if you're doing anything for an hour or longer on a stationary trainer, I usually use 90 minutes outside that you're replenishing during and a little bit after. It also depends on the foods you're eating. If you have a lot of salt in your diet, if you're like, having like a freezer burrito afterwards, which I have a lot after I get off the trainer, probably has a lot of sodium. And I mean that genuinely. There's no need to use our products when you don't need to use them, when you can get what you can get through food. So if you're an hour or longer, I would start looking at using supplements for replenishment. But even for me, I ate a pretty good sized breakfast this morning, and I didn't eat anything on the trainer. But I did have fast chews because for me, 90 minutes, super sweaty. I only had 4, but yeah, it's hard. It's a hard thing to prescribe. And it also depends what you're doing on the trainer. I was doing intervals, so I was super sweaty. Sometimes I just spin and watch Netflix and probably don't need to take any sports nutrition in.
Right, because we appreciate the discount, but like, hey, we don't have to waste money on
No.
the product. We definitely want to be mindful, as well.
Yeah.
Jess, I had another question for you, specifically for women around the time of like PMS time, when we're needing more electrolytes and our core temperature is higher. Is there a way that we can use the chews or something if we're racing in PMS week, for example? Is there something that could help us to perform a little bit better by adjusting our electrolytes?
Yeah. And this is a really great question. Yeah, we have it so much harder than you guys. So there. It is when you're on your menstrual cycle and you're racing. So yeah, your core temperature is higher. And also you can't utilize carbohydrates the same way when you're on your menstrual cycle. So if you've ever noticed that your heart rate just will not go up, it's because your body is literally telling you, like, I can't burn carbs. I don't want to be in that zone. So it is really challenging. And it kind of sucks when the timing just works out like that. But if you do keep track of that, again, I would say that it's something that I would be thinking of like the week before and just staying on top of it, and then maybe increasing a little bit. So looking at it like, okay, I'm in a hot and humid environment, or I'm in a stressful environment. I'm going to allow myself to eat those extra carbs. I'm going to take on a little bit more electrolytes. I'm maybe going to decrease my caffeine intake a little bit. And practice that before your events. Everyone is so different. Every teammate I've had teammates that they perform their best on their menstrual cycles. I don't know how or why. There is some research behind that. But I think it's so preferential to you. Just to put the question back on you, have you tried anything? Have you noticed increased electrolyte intake or increased hydration being helpful?
Honestly, nothing much has helped me.
Yeah, it's pretty tricky.
Read Stacy Sims' book like 3 times and done her intake of more magnesium and all of that prior, like when I'm racing, and specifically in this like one time in PMS. So to touch on what you said, I think what helps me most is being really diligent about tracking in my training when I'm feeling the worst. And usually I find it's like not the days right before my period, it's like the days before that I feel the worst. And then like there's a window before I get my period, and then during my period I feel bad, but then slightly after, then I'm like really ready to perform. So it's more like about choosing races that like don't fall in these 2 windows that I'm really like my body just isn't working and responding to anything. I do find that if I'm really diligent about taking in electrolytes during the race when I'm in PMS and racing in PMS, then that tends to help more. But yeah, it's like more than I would normally take in, definitely.
Yeah. Stacy talks about that in her book too, about even with training, like if you're on a lightning rod day, freaking go for it if you're a woman, because sometimes that has to do with your cycle, and like you might want to let go of those interval training days during whatever portion of your cycle where you're not feeling good, because you're sort of banging your head against the wall with that. So I wish I had a better answer, but tracking is helpful. For me, it seems like it would always fall on the week of a really big stage race, like the world's hardest stage race with the world's hardest road race. And it's just like, what can you do? You suffer through it and you try your best to think about your nutrition and stay on top of it. But on the book, it's called Roar, ROAR, by Stacy Sims. She's a leader in sort of like, her slogan is women are not small men. There's another physician, her name's Emily Krause, and she has a program called FASTR, FASTR. She's a physician at Stanford, and all of her research is on female athletes. And her Instagram is pumping out the most amazing information about these topics. So, yeah.
Curious, I see the watermelon, and there's like a debate, with lemon lime and the orange. Like, any new flavors coming out, or any kind of new things coming down the pipe for 2023?
So we just launched our mixed berry and our tropical mango for the fast chews. And then our drink mix comes in the 3 flavors, the tart orange, lemon lime, and tropical mango. We have 2 flavors developed, one of which we might release. We have a super crazy first ever type of flavor that we're working on. I just want to mention our other brands quickly. Our Bonk Breaker energy bars line has a sandwich bar. So it's like a peanut butter and jelly bar. It's really good. We're kind of innovating on that side with that concept of like bar on the outside, gel, like real fruit filling on the inside. So it's like a bar and gel combined. And we have the energy chews line, which are like the gummies. So we just released like our Rainbow Blast. It's like a Skittles flavor. We have a root beer flavor, a cola flavor. So we're innovating across that, and Joje. We have a limited edition salted chai right now. So we're your one-stop shop. If I think that it's good to have a variety, and I think that there's a lot of brands that are similar to us, like Untapped, they make a maple syrup and a waffle. Like, it's good not to get burnt out. So I'm
getting pinged here. So the $1 million question is that salt stick discount, does that work on the Bonk Breaker products as well, or how does that work? How can our athletes partake in that, or do we need to take that offline with Ed?
So this is like one of those, we were supposed to launch our unified cart for all of our brands last week, and we're having technical difficulties. So yes, you would have to go to each website right now. We have a $50 minimum shipping threshold. So as soon as we get our acts together over here, we will have a unified cart where you could shop all brands and use that discount code.
Okay, great. All right. So that answers the burning question there for folks. So I think that when you said peanut butter and jelly, that woke everybody up. So
it's really good.
Okay, perfect. I know we're coming up on time here. This is definitely, Justice, has definitely been a great discussion here. And so are there any other questions? Lizzie, did you have any questions coming in through your end?
I see this question about the Joje and Bonk Breaker distinction.
Yeah.
Great question. Everyone asks us that, especially retailers. So Joje is baked like a cookie. Like I said, we're an almond butter based bar. It's essentially a healthy cookie batter. We have more culinary flavors, like we have a pancakes and bacon flavor, white chocolate coconut blondie, lemon blueberry quinoa. So a little bit more chef inspired, and they're dense. So it's relatively high carb content, around 33 to 35 grams, and also a higher fat content for endurance fuel, so 13 to 15 grams. So this is like your dense bar, like you can substitute it for breakfast. It's going to fuel you during your long activities. And it has like a really unique taste and texture. I can promise you, you've never had a bar like this. And I'm not saying that just because I made it, but like, it does not taste like a bar. It tastes like it came out of an oven. The Bonk Breaker bars are not baked, and there's a variation in the line. So he has his energy fuel. Like I said, it's that sort of endurance and quick energy with the sort of like gel bar concept, and it's a real fruit filling in the middle. And then other parts of his line, he has other energy bars. And when I say he, Jason is the founder of Bonk Breaker, and he's also part of our team. He was a D1 football player. So his line really thinks about pre, during, after. So he has a couple variations on protein bars, a plant-based protein option with brown rice protein. And then he also has a collagen protein bar that also has whey protein. So that's a little bit of the distinction of the lines. For in a super general, knowing your carbohydrate intake over the course of training or events is really similar to like your sweat rate. It depends on your size. Could be anywhere from like 50 to 100 grams per hour. 200 to 400 calories per hour. So to start, you could aim, if you're going over 90 minutes, 1 bar per hour, and then like scale up from there with distance and intensity. Lizzie, was that the question you were going to ask?
I was just gonna direct you to the chat because they had that question. So
Yeah.
But that's very helpful, the information about carb intake, and having those ranges to work with, so people can start studying their own bodies and see if they fall more on the end of 50 carbs or if they perform better at 100 carbs. And it's super variable. Like I have larger athletes that do better with less carbs and smaller athletes that do better with more carbs. So really is something that you have to study about yourself.
Carbs make you fast, not fat. That's what I always say.
Love it. Love it. All right.
Yeah,
Well,
we should make that into a
should
t-shirt.
we put that on a t-shirt? Yes, I think
Please.
I think Ed is probably already working on that. So yes, Colleen, we'll get that in the mix there. Well, Jess and Noah, this was great. Thank you very much. This is very informative, and we appreciate all the knowledge you provided the team with, and we're walking away with a lot of information here. So again, thank you on behalf of Varlo for speaking with us and getting all of us together to have a good race in 2023, whatever that is, and being much more prepared now. So thank you. Lizzie, did you have any closing remarks on your end?
No, just thank you so much for supporting us and sharing all of your knowledge.
And I will say thank you all. Lizzie and Noah did send us, Team Varlo, a lot of product for our welcome swag bags, so everyone can be happy to look out for those early next year as the Team Varlo items ship out.
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening, and have a good holiday as well. Okay.
Happy holidays.
Right.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jesse.
Yeah.
Thanks, Noah.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.